Look up at the night sky. It seems peaceful, doesn't it? A vast, twinkling ocean of stars. But to a physicist, that silence isn't peaceful, it is a scream. If the universe is as old and as large as we know it is, the sky shouldn't be dark. It should be blindingly bright with the traffic of a billion civilizations. But there is nothing, just a terrifying, endless static. So, we are left with two possibilities. Either we're the first to arrive at the party, or we are the last ones left alive. We are conditioned by science fiction to view the cosmos as a waiting room. We imagine it is brimming with potential friends, rivals, and ancient guardians, all just waiting for us to invent the right engine to meet them. We assume the silence is merely a result of distance, a temporary problem that technology will eventually solve. But if you strip away the romanticism and look at the raw data, that feeling of awe should curdle into something closer to panic. You are not looking at a frontier waiting to be explored. You're looking at a crime scene where the bodies have been removed. To understand the gravity of this situation, we first have to wrap our heads around the violent scale of the stage we are standing on. The Milky Way alone contains somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars. That is a number so vast that the human brain treats it as an abstraction, not a reality. But let's try to visualize it physically. Imagine you are standing on a beach, holding a single grain of sand between your fingers. Feel its rough edges and its insignificance against your skin. Now look down at the beach and imagine counting every single grain of sand on that shoreline. Then count every grain in every desert, every dune, and every ocean floor on Earth. The number you would arrive at is staggering, yet it is still not enough to match the inventory of the universe. For every single grain of sand on our entire planet, there are 10,000 stars out there burning in the dark. Each one is a nuclear furnace capable of sustaining a system, and we now know they are not lonely. The ingredients for life are not rare commodities. They are the most common things in existence. Carbon, water, and energy are scattered across the void like dust in a sunbeam. Current data suggests that billions of these stars have Earth-sized planets orbiting in the habitable zone. Even if we are incredibly conservative and assume life is a freak accident happening once in a billion systems, we should still be drowning in company. The sheer volume of the dice rolls means the galaxy should be crowded. But the spatial scale is only half of the problem. The temporal scale is where the math truly begins to tighten its grip around our throats. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. To understand how late we are to the party, look at the age of our own solar system. We are roughly 4.5 billion years old. This means the universe had already existed for over 9 billion years before the Earth was even formed. That is 9 billion years of opportunities for other stars to be born and for other planets to cool. It is 9 billion years for other civilizations to rise from the primordial soup and gaze up at the night sky. In that immense stretch of time, empires could have risen and fallen 1,000 times over. Their entire history could have played out from stone tools to transcendence, while our solar system was nothing more than a cloud of hydrogen gas. Compare that to us. Humans have only been around for 200,000 years. We have had radio technology for barely a century. We are not even a rounding error in the cosmic calendar. We are a glitch. While our ancestors were still trying to figure out fire, other civilizations could have been building Dyson spheres. They could have been harvesting the energy of black holes while Earth was still a ball of molten rock. We are the new kids on the block, stumbling into a library that has been open for eons. This creates a terrifying discrepancy because the time it takes to colonize a galaxy is laughably short compared to the age of the galaxy itself. We tend to think that interstellar travel requires magic technology like warp drives or wormholes. But the math shows that you can conquer the Milky Way with nothing more than physics as we currently understand it. You do not need a ship that carries a biological crew across the void. You only need a von Neumann probe. This is a self-replicating machine designed to travel to a nearby star system and mine the local asteroids for resources. It builds copies of itself and then moves on to the next system. This process creates an exponential explosion of machinery that functions exactly like a virus spreading through a host body. Even if these ships traveled at a snail's pace, say 1% of the speed of light, the math is inescapable. The fleet would grow from one probe to millions, then to billions. It would cover every star system in the entire galaxy in just 2 million years. 2 million years might sound like a long time to a human, but in the context of the universe, it is a blink of an eye. It is a single frame in a 2-hour movie. If a single civilization had achieved this level of technology at any point in the last 10 billion years, their machinery would be everywhere by now. We should see their probes waiting for us in our own asteroid belt, monitoring our radio transmissions. We should see Dyson spheres blocking the light of distant stars. The galaxy should be loud with the heat emissions of their industry and the structure of their networks. It should be paved over with their technology. The fact that it is not suggests that no one has ever launched such a probe. This brings us back to the metaphor of the empty house, which is no longer a comforting image of solitude, but a scene of visceral horror. We have walked into this mansion expecting a party, or at least a greeting. Instead, we found the doors unlocked and the hallways deserted. The tea on the table is hot, meaning someone was here just a moment ago. The lights are on, meaning the power is still running. But the silence is absolute. We call out, "Hello?" and the only answer is the echo of our own voice bouncing off the walls. This leads us to the most terrifying realization of all. If the house is empty, it is not because no one ever lived here. It is because something happened to them. Something removed them from existence with such efficiency that they didn't even leave a note. The math says they must be here. The silence says they are gone. This implies that the galaxy is not a pristine wilderness waiting to be claimed, but a graveyard. It suggests there's a mechanism at work that scrubs the slate clean before anyone can become loud enough to be heard. We call this mechanism the Great Filter. And the fact that we hear nothing means the filter is working with 100% efficiency. This silence is not just a lack of noise, it is a data point. In science, when your theory predicts a specific outcome and your experiment yields the exact opposite, you do not ignore the result. You accept that your theory is flawed. Our theory was that life is easy, that intelligence is a natural progression, and that the universe should be teeming with civilizations. The observation is that the universe is a desolate wasteland. When you reconcile these two things, you are left with a deduction that is chilling in its simplicity. There is a hidden variable in the equation, a factor we failed to account for in our optimism. We call this variable the Great Filter. It is a concept that transforms the galaxy from a playground into an obstacle course, one designed with a lethality rate of nearly 100%. The theory suggests that there is a specific step in the evolutionary timeline that is almost impossible to cross. It is a hurdle so high, or a trap so cunning, that it stops life from ever reaching the stage where it can travel the stars. Think of the history of life not as a smooth road, but as a series of lottery tickets. To get from a dead rock to a galactic civilization, you have to win the lottery not once, but a dozen times in a row. You have to roll a 6, and then roll another 6, and another for billions of years without fail. The Great Filter is the step where the dice are weighted against you. It is the step where the probability drops to 0. If this theory is correct, it explains the silence perfectly. The reason we don't see von Neumann probes dismantling the asteroid belt is not because no one wants to build them. It is because no one survives long enough to figure out how. The universe is not empty because it is young. It is empty because it is dangerous. It is a machine that is incredibly efficient at scrubbing life from existence before it can become significant. This implies that the natural state of the universe is sterility. Islands of life may pop up here and there, flickering like candles in a hurricane, but something always blows them out before they can set the rest of the world on fire. We are not looking at a blank canvas. We are looking at chalkboard that has been erased over and over again. The silence is the sound of that eraser moving across the dark. To understand where we fit into this slaughterhouse, we have to look at the staircase of evolution. We tend to view our own history as inevitable, as if it were destiny for single-celled organisms to eventually build skyscrapers and write philosophy. But evolution has no destiny. It only has survival. And the path from the primordial soup to the stars is paved with impossible bottlenecks. The first step on this staircase is the leap from dead matter to living matter, a process we call abiogenesis. We assume this is easy because it happened here, but we have never been able to replicate in a lab. It is entirely possible that the arrangement of atoms required to create the first self-replicating molecule is so complex that it happens only once in a universe. Perhaps the galaxy is filled with planets that have water and atmosphere, but they remain dead oceans forever. If life does manage to start, it faces the next hurdle, the jump from simple, single-celled organisms to complex life. For billions of years, Earth was inhabited solely by bacteria. They floated in the oceans, doing absolutely nothing but dividing. Then, by some freak accident, one bacterium swallowed another and didn't digest it. This created the mitochondria, the powerhouse that allowed for complex, multicellular life. This might be the filter. Maybe the universe is teeming with slime. Maybe every star has a planet covered in green algae, but that is where the story ends. The jump to complexity requires an energy revolution that is so unlikely. It effectively never happens. In this scenario, the galaxy is a garden of moss and mold, with not a single brain to be found in the darkness. But let's assume a species makes it past that. They develop complexity, they crawl onto land, and they develop brains. Now they face the hurdle of intelligence. We like to think intelligence is the ultimate goal of evolution, but that is human arrogance speaking. Evolution prefers what works, and for most of Earth's history, being big and strong worked better than being smart. Brains are expensive. They consume a massive amount of energy, they make childbirth dangerous, and they take years to mature. From an evolutionary standpoint, high intelligence is often a liability, not an asset. It is entirely possible that on a trillion other worlds, life flourished for eons without ever developing the capacity to do math. The dinosaurs ruled for 150 million years without ever inventing the wheel. If intelligence is the filter, then we are surrounded by worlds filled with cattle and predators, vast ecosystems of roaring beasts that will never look up at the stars and wonder what they are. They will live, eat, and die in a cycle that lasts until their sun burns out, leaving no trace that they ever existed. But there is one final step on the staircase, and it is the most terrifying one of all. This is the step where civilization develops the technology to destroy itself. We know this step exists because we are standing on it right now. We have split the atom, we have altered our climate, and we have built biological weapons. It is possible that as soon as a species gets smart enough to manipulate the fundamental forces of nature, it inevitably commits suicide. This is the staircase of death. Somewhere on this climb, there is a sniper. There is a specific point where the probability of continuing is so low that it effectively blocks everyone. The silence of the night sky tells us that the sniper is out there. It tells us that almost everyone who starts the climb eventually takes a bullet. And this leads us to the binary horror of our situation. The existence of the great filter forces us to ask one simple question. Where is the filter on our timeline? There are only two possibilities, and both of them are fuel for existential dread. The first possibility is that the filter is behind us. We have already passed the impossible step. Maybe the impossible part was the spark of life itself, or the creation of the complex cell. If the filter is behind us, it means we are the chosen ones. We are the lottery winners who survived the odds that killed everyone else. It means that we are effectively the first and only intelligence in the Milky Way. We are the lonely gods of a dead galaxy, tasked with the burden of carrying the torch of consciousness through a universe that is entirely indifferent to us. This sounds like a victory, but it is a lonely, crushing victory. It means that no one is coming to help us. No ancient Vulcan logic will guide us. No galactic federation will welcome us. We are utterly alone in the dark, and if we extinguish ourselves, the universe goes back to being a meaningless arrangement of atoms, perhaps forever. The responsibility is absolute. But the second possibility is far worse. The second possibility is that the filter is ahead of us. It means that the difficult part of history was not the origin of life, nor the rise of intelligence. It means that getting to where we are today is actually quite easy. It implies that the galaxy has birthed thousands of civilizations just like ours, societies that discovered radio, built cities, and dreamed of the stars. If the filter is ahead of us, then all those civilizations are dead because they hit a wall that we have not yet reached. They looked at their night skies, saw the same silence we see, and assumed they were special, right up until the moment the hammer fell. This scenario turns our future into a grim inevitability. It means we are walking toward a cliff edge that looks like a horizon. This is why a physicist will tell you that finding life on Mars would be the worst news in human history. If we find simple bacteria, it's bad, because it means the first step, abiogenesis, is easy. If we find ruins of a complex civilization, it is catastrophic. It would prove that getting to our level is common, which means the thing that kills civilizations is still waiting for us in the future. In this scenario, we are not gods. We are walking corpses. We are simply the next batch of cattle moving down the chute, unaware of the slaughterhouse at the end of the line. We look at our nuclear stockpiles, our decaying ecosystems, and our fragile societal structures, and we have to wonder if the mechanism of our destruction is already grinding into gear. The silence of a universe is a verdict. It tells us that one of these two scenarios is true. Either we are incredibly rare, or we are incredibly doomed. To understand which fate is ours, we must examine the evidence for each. We must look at the variables that might have saved us in the past, and the threats that might destroy us in the future. To understand if we are doomed, we first have to look at the possibility that we are the luckiest things in existence. We have to analyze the rare Earth hypothesis, the idea that our planet is not just a rock, but a miracle of cosmic engineering. Let's look at the possibility that the filter is behind us, and that the universe has conspired for billions of years just to allow you to sit here and think. Let's assume for a moment that the silence is not a threat, but a compliment. It suggests that the great filter is real, but we have already passed it. This is the rare Earth hypothesis, and it posits that the chain of events leading to human intelligence is so incredibly specific that it has happened only once. In this version of the story, the universe is not hostile. It is simply difficult. We are not the cattle waiting for the slaughter. We are the lottery winners holding the only winning ticket in a pile of trillions of losers. To understand why this might be true, we have to look at the history of life on our own planet. We often assume that evolution is a straight line, a constant march toward complexity, but the fossil record tells a different story. Life appeared on Earth almost as soon as the planet cooled down enough to support it, which suggests that simple life is easy. If you have water and heat, bacteria will inevitably appear. But then for the next 2 billion years, absolutely nothing happened. The Earth was covered in a layer of single-celled slime that did nothing but divide and exist. There were no plants, no animals, no insects, just an endless ocean of microscopic simplicity. Evolution stalled. This massive gap in the timeline suggests that the jump from simple life to complex life is not a natural progression. It is a freak accident. It requires a biological miracle that is so unlikely it shouldn't have happened at all. That miracle occurred when one single-celled organism tried to eat another one, but failed to digest it. Instead of dying, the eaten cell survived and began to generate energy for its host. This internal power plant became the mitochondria, the engine that powers every complex living thing on Earth today. This merger gave life the energy budget to build multicellular bodies, to grow brains, and to eventually build spaceships. Biologists believe this merger may have happened only once in the entire history of our planet. It is not a common event, It is a statistical anomaly. If this is the great filter, then the galaxy is likely teeming with life, but it is all just slime. There are no starships, no radio signals, and no ruins. There are only silent oceans filled with bacteria that will never learn to think, trapped in an eternal loop of mindless reproduction until their stars burn out. This perspective fundamentally changes our relationship with the night sky. If the rare Earth hypothesis is correct, then we are not looking for neighbors. We are looking at a wilderness. We are the only island of consciousness in a sea of dead matter. This realization brings a heavy, crushing burden because it means that we are the elder race that we have always fantasized about in our fiction. In science fiction, humans are usually the newcomers, the scrappy upstarts joining a galactic community of ancient, wise aliens who have mastered the secrets of the universe. We want that to be true because it makes us feel safe. It implies that there are adults in the room, beings who can stop us from destroying ourselves or teach us how to live. But the silence suggests that there are no adults. We are the oldest, smartest, and most advanced civilization in the Milky Way, simply by default. If we're the first to wake up, then the responsibility for the future of the universe rests entirely on our shoulders. We are the universe's only way of knowing itself. Without us, the cosmos is just a blind, dumb machine grinding through physics equations in the dark. It has no meaning, no beauty, and no history, because there is no one there to observe it. We are the eyes of the galaxy, and if we blink out, the lights go off forever. This makes our current behavior terrifyingly reckless. We treat our survival as a game, toying with nuclear weapons and ecological collapse, assuming that if we fail, life will go on. But if the rare Earth hypothesis is true, life will not go on. If we destroy ourselves, we are not just ending human history. We are ending the only history that matters. We are extinguishing the only flame that has managed to spark in 13 billion years of darkness. There's a profound loneliness in being the firstborn. We are screaming into the void, begging for a sign that we are not alone, but the void is only echoing our own desperation back at us. We are the guardians of a legacy that has just begun, and we are doing a terrible job of protecting it. We're children playing with matches in a library, unaware that we're the only ones who can read the books. But as heavy as this burden is, it is the optimistic scenario. It assumes that the hard part is over. It assumes that the silence is a result of our uniqueness, and that the path ahead is open for us to take. It tells us that we have already survived the sniper on the staircase. But there is another option. There is a possibility that explains the silence not by our success, but by our impending doom. The alternative is that the great filter is not behind us. It suggests that the leap to complex life is easy, and that intelligence evolves all the time. It implies that the galaxy has birthed thousands of civilizations just like ours, and the reason we don't see them is not because they never existed. It is because they are all dead. We are not the first to arrive. We are simply the next in line for the slaughter. If the rare Earth hypothesis feels too arrogant for you, then you are ready for the alternative. This is the theory that strips away our special status and replaces it with a death sentence. It suggests that life is actually incredibly common, that the galaxy is churning out biological sludge and simple animals on billions of worlds. It posits that the climb for bacteria to intelligence is not a miracle, but a standard feature of evolution. In this scenario, the great filter is not behind us. It is waiting directly in front of us. The theory argues that the silence of the universe is not caused by a lack of life. It is caused by the short lifespan of civilizations. It suggests that there is a fundamental flaw in the architecture of intelligence itself, a trap that snaps shut the moment a species becomes powerful enough to manipulate the building blocks of matter. The very tools that allow a civilization to conquer its own planet are the same tools that inevitably destroy it. We are not looking at an empty room. We're looking at a room full of corpses that killed themselves before they could open the door. Consider the trajectory of human progress. For 200,000 years, our technology was limited to stone tools and fire. If a tribe made a mistake, They burned down a forest or starved to death. The damage was local. But in the last century, we have unlocked the power to sterilize the entire biosphere. We went from horse-drawn carriages to thermonuclear weapons in a single lifetime. The curve of our power is vertical, but the curve of our wisdom is flat. We are essentially gods with the minds of cavemen. We still possess the same tribal instincts, the same aggression, and the same short-term thinking that our ancestors used to fight over a deer carcass. But now, instead of spears, we are holding the keys to synthetic biology and artificial intelligence. We have built a global machine of destruction that requires perfect rational behavior to manage, but we are an irrational species. We are a toddler who has found a loaded handgun in the nightstand. It is not a matter of if the gun goes off. It is only a matter of when. This leads to the concept of the flicker. If the great filter is ahead of us, it means that civilizations rise constantly like bubbles in a boiling pot. They develop radio, they build cities, and they look up at the stars with hope. But almost immediately after they reach this stage, they destroy themselves. They succumb to war, to resource depletion, or to a scientific experiment that goes wrong. In cosmic time, they do not last for eras. They last for a split second. Imagine the galaxy as a giant Christmas tree covered in billions of lights. But these lights are not designed to stay on. They are designed to flash once and then burn out forever. If the duration of that flash is short, say a few thousand years, then the chances of two lights being on at the same time and close enough to see each other are statistically zero. When we look up, we are seeing the dark intervals between the flashes. We are looking at a history of brief, violent sparks that vanished into the dark long before we invented the telescope. This explains why we haven't met anyone. A civilization might have thrived on a planet orbiting Betelgeuse 5 million years ago. They might have built wonders and composed operas, but they wiped themselves out 4 million years before we built the pyramids. Their radio waves washed over Earth when we were just apes hitting rocks together, and by the time we learned to listen, their signal had already passed us by. The silence is simply a matter of bad timing. We're missing the party because everyone else left early. We have uncomfortably strong evidence to support this theory in our own recent history. We have possessed the capacity for global annihilation for less than a century, and we have already almost used it half a dozen times. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the fate of the species came down to the decision of a single man on a submarine. We survived by dumb luck, not by wisdom. If you replay that scenario 1,000 times, how many times does humanity make it to the 21st century? Now, project that danger forward. What happens when the technology to build a virus that kills everyone becomes available to a small group of people? What happens when artificial intelligence decides that carbon-based life is an inefficiency? The number of ways we can destroy ourselves is growing every year, while our ability to cooperate remains stagnant. The Great Filter suggests that this is not a solvable problem. It is a universal constant. It implies that technology is a cancer. It grows exponentially until it kills the host. Every civilization reaches a tipping point where the cost of destruction becomes cheaper than the cost of survival. Once the threshold is crossed, the clock starts ticking. The silence we hear is the sound of billions of civilizations that reached that tipping point and failed to stop the momentum. They choked on their own smoke, irradiated their own atmosphere, or dismantled their own biology in a pursuit of progress that had no brakes. This view turns the night sky into a forecast. It tells us that the reason we are alone is that no one survives the awkward teenage phase of technological development. We are currently in that phase, speeding down a highway at night with no headlights, convinced that we are the exception to the rule. But the wreckage on the side of the road suggests otherwise. The graveyard is not empty. It is just full of people who thought they were smart enough to beat the odds. This is a terrifying thought because it means our extinction is likely inevitable. It means this silence is actually the aftermath of 1 billion suicides. But as dark as this is, it is not the worst-case scenario. Suicide is a tragedy, but at least it is a choice. It implies that the failure was internal, a result of our own incompetence. But there is a third option, a theory that says the silence isn't caused by death, it is caused by fear. It suggests that the civilizations that survive don't burn out. They go quiet. They stop broadcasting. They turn off the lights and lock the doors. They are out there, right now, watching the dark, and they are hiding from something. There's a third explanation for the silence, one that does not require us to be special or incompetent. It requires only that we are naive. The previous theories assume that the universe is either a benevolent community waiting to be found or a neutral ground where civilizations fail on their own. But there is a darker possibility, a theory that suggests the universe is a place of active malice. It posits that the silence is not a sign of absence, but a strategy of survival. We call this the dark forest theory. Imagine the universe is a dark forest at night. It is vast, silent, and terrifyingly unknown. In this forest, every civilization is an armed hunter stalking through the trees. They move with absolute caution, pushing aside branches without making a sound, breathing shallowly to avoid detection. They know that the forest is not empty. They know that behind every tree, in the shadow of every bush, there could be another hunter. And they know that the other hunter is armed. In this scenario, the primary axiom of cosmic sociology is survival. Every civilization wants to live, but the resources of the universe are finite. This creates a zero-sum game where the existence of another intelligent species is an inherent threat. You cannot know their intentions. They might appear friendly today, but what about 1,000 years from now? They might be technologically inferior today, but technology evolves exponentially. A primitive neighbor today is a godlike conqueror tomorrow. This creates a chain of suspicion that cannot be broken. If you see another hunter in the forest, you cannot afford to wait and see if they are friendly. You cannot communicate with them to establish a truce, because the act of communication reveals your position. If you speak, you die. Therefore, the only rational move for any civilization that encounters another is to eliminate them immediately. You shoot first, and you do not ask questions later. You cleanse the threat before it can become a rival. This theory explains the Fermi Paradox with a chilling logic. The universe is full of life, perhaps millions of civilizations, but they are all hiding. They are maintaining absolute radio silence because they know the rules of the game. They know that to broadcast one's existence is to paint a target on one's own back. The silence we hear is not the quiet of an empty room. It is the held breath of 1,000 predators waiting for someone to make a mistake. The reason we see no megastructures, no Dyson spheres, and no galactic empires is that building them is too dangerous. A Dyson sphere blocking a star is a beacon. It tells everyone in the galaxy, here is a civilization with vast energy resources. It is a dinner bell for any advanced species looking to eliminate a potential threat. So the smart ones stay small. They stay quiet. They hide in the dark, listening to the static, waiting for a fool to light a fire. This brings us to the most horrifying part of the theory, us. If the galaxy is a dark forest full of silent, armed hunters, then humanity is a toddler who has wandered in with a drum set. We're the only ones who do not understand the rules. For the last 100 years, we have been blasting our existence into the void with reckless abandon. We have been screaming, "Here I am," at the top of our lungs, completely unaware of the eyes that might be turning toward us. We have sent radio waves carrying our music, our television, and our political speeches expanding out into the cosmos at the speed of light. We have sent the Arecibo message, a literal greeting card directed at a cluster of stars, detailing our DNA, our population, and exactly where we live. We have launched the Voyager probes, golden records strapped to rockets, containing maps that pinpoint the location of our solar system relative to pulsars. We essentially drew a map to our front door and slid it under the door of the universe. We treat the search for extraterrestrial intelligence as a fun, scientific endeavor. We build massive dishes to listen for signals, and we debate what we should say when we finally make contact. We assume that anyone who can travel the stars must be wise, peaceful, and benevolent. We project our own morals onto beings that might view us as nothing more than a potential bacterial infection. We're like a bird chirping in the jungle, assuming that the rustling in the leaves is a friend coming to say hello. But in the dark forest, there are no friends. There are only the silent and the dead. Our behavior is not just naive, it is suicidal. We have lit a massive campfire in the middle of the woods. We are dancing around it, singing songs, and wondering why no one has joined us yet. We do not realize that the light of our fire is casting long shadows against the trees, and that in those shadows, things are beginning to move. The only reason we are still alive is likely due to the vast distances involved. The galaxy is huge, and our radio bubble is still relatively small. It has only reached a tiny fraction of the stars in our neighborhood. It is possible that the nearest hunter just hasn't heard us yet. The signal is traveling through the void, carrying the news of a defenseless, resource-rich planet, and it is only a matter of time before it hits the wrong receiver. When that signal arrives, the response will not be a diplomatic envoy. It will not be a flying saucer landing on the White House lawn to exchange knowledge. It will be a relativistic kill vehicle, a chunk of metal moving at near-light speed, designed to sterilize our planet before we even know we are under attack. We won't hear it coming. One moment we will be debating politics and the economy, and the next moment the atmosphere will ignite. This perspective turns the silence into a source of immediate dread. It suggests that the lack of contact is not a failure of our technology, but a temporary reprieve. We are living on borrowed time, shouting into the dark, gambling our entire species on the hope that there is no one out there to hear us. But the math says they are there, and the silence says they are hunting. However, there is one final possibility. It is less violent than the dark forest, but perhaps even more humiliating. It suggests that the aliens aren't hiding from us, and they aren't waiting to kill us. It suggests that they have been watching us for a long time, but they have chosen not to make contact for a very specific reason. What if they aren't hunters? What if they are watching us right now, treating us not as enemies, but as specimens? There is a final theory that is less violent than the dark forest, but in many ways, it is far more humiliating. It suggests that the aliens are not hiding from us out of fear, nor are they dead. They are fully aware of our existence. They have known about us since we were dragging our knuckles through the dirt, but they have chosen, quite deliberately, not to speak to us. We call this the zoo hypothesis. To understand this, we have to look at how we treat primitive cultures on our own planet. In the Amazon rainforest and on the North Sentinel Island, there are tribes that have had almost no contact with the outside world. We know they are there. We can fly satellites over their villages and map every square inch of their territory. We have the technology to land a helicopter in their central plaza and hand them iPhones and antibiotics. But we don't. We have established a prime directive of sorts, a policy of non-interference. We designate their territory as a protected zone and we leave them alone. We do this to preserve their natural development or perhaps to protect them from our diseases. To the tribe, the silence of the world beyond the jungle is absolute. They have no idea that a global civilization surrounds them, teeming with billions of people and technologies they cannot comprehend. They think they're the center of the world, but they are really just living in a nature preserve. Now, scale this up to the galactic level. Imagine that the Earth is North Sentinel Island. We're the primitive tribe throwing spears at the moon and lighting fires in the dark. The civilizations out there are not ignoring us because we are hidden. They are ignoring us because we are not ready. They have drawn a boundary line around our solar system and marked it as a do not disturb zone. The silence is not an accident, it is a policy. This perspective crushes human arrogance because it implies that we are not interesting enough to talk to. We tend to think that if aliens found us, they would be fascinated by our art, our philosophy, and our wars. But that is pure vanity. To a civilization that has mastered the energy of stars and conquered immortality, we are not peers. We are ants building a mound of dirt next to a superhighway. When you walk past an anthill, you don't feel hatred toward the ants. You don't want to destroy them. But you also don't crouch down and try to teach them mathematics. You don't try to bring them into your society or ask them for their opinion on the economy. You simply step over them. To you, their great wars and mighty structures are nothing more than dirt moving around in the grass. We are likely just as boring to them. But the theory gets darker when you consider the concept of the zoo more literally. A zoo is not just a place where animals are left alone. It is a place where they are watched. If the zoo hypothesis is true, then the silence of the night sky is actually the sound of one-way glass. We are in a cage, a terrarium designed to keep us in and keep the reality of the universe out. The stars we see are real, but the context is a lie. This implies that we are being observed. Somewhere, strictly out of range of our sensors, there are instruments pointed at Earth. They are recording our history, our biological evolution, and our social collapse. We are a longitudinal study, a science experiment running its course. They might be waiting to see if we destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons, just to gather data on how primitive societies fail. Or perhaps we are not an experiment. Perhaps we are entertainment. It is a sickening thought, but we might be the galactic equivalent of a reality television show. The drama of our wars, the tragedy of our plagues, and the comedy of our politics might be broadcast to 1 trillion bored immortals across the Milky Way. They watch us struggle and die with the same detached amusement that we feel when we watch a documentary about lions hunting gazelles. This would explain why they never intervene. If a lion kills a cub, the filmmaker does not jump in to save it. That would ruin the authenticity of the scene. The prime directive of the filmmaker is to observe, never to touch. So they watch us burn our cities and poison our oceans, and they simply record the footage. The silence is the silence of an audience that knows it must stay quiet so the actors don't realize they are on a stage. There is a specific variation of this theory called the planetarium hypothesis. It suggests that our understanding of the universe is a complete fabrication engineered by our keepers. It posits that we are not just in a zoo, but in a simulation or a holographic illusion designed to make us think we are alone. They might be feeding us fake data, projecting a false image of a dead universe to keep us calm, or to keep us from trying to leave. This is the ultimate paranoia. It suggests that everything we know about physics and astronomy is a lie tailored to keep the inmates docile. We are pushing against the walls of our cell, thinking we are exploring the infinite, when we are actually just bumping into the glass. The reason we haven't found anyone is that the zookeepers haven't written anyone else into the script. We are alone because the simulation doesn't have the budget for extras. This leaves us with a profound sense of claustrophobia. We are trapped in a solar system that feels less like a home and more like a petri dish. We are desperate for contact, screaming into the void, unaware that the beings we're calling out are standing right on the other side of the glass, taking notes. They see us, but they do not care. To them, we're just biology doing what biology does. We have now walked through the 4 corridors of the Great Silence, and each one leads to a different kind of nightmare. In the first scenario, we are the rare Earth, the lonely gods of a dead galaxy, bearing the crushing weight of being the only consciousness in existence. In the second, we are the coming end, walking corpses marching toward a great filter that has already killed everyone else. In the third, we are in the dark forest, a defenseless child shouting in a wood filled with silent, armed hunters. And here, in the fourth, we are specimens in a zoo, trapped behind glass, ignored by beings who view us as nothing more than bugs. We have looked for comfort in the stars, and we have found only mirrors reflecting our own insignificance. No matter which theory is true, the result is the same. We are staring into the void, and the void is not blinking. The silence is absolute, and it is indifferent to our fear. We are isolated on a rock, drifting through a hostile or empty dark, and no one is coming to save us. So, we're left with the final question, the only one that actually matters. What do we do with that fear? We have spent this time staring into the abyss, looking for a reflection, and the abyss has offered us nothing but a blank stare. We search for gods to guide us, for friends to comfort us, or even for monsters to unite us. Instead, we found a void so profound that it makes human history feel like a momentary glitch in a dead machine. The silence of a night sky is not just a lack of noise. It is a heavy, suffocating weight. It forces us to confront the possibility that the universe is not a community, but a graveyard, or a wilderness, or a cage. It ultimately does not matter which of the theories is correct. Whether we are the survivors of a great filter, the prey in a dark forest, or the exhibits in a zoo, the practical reality remains the same. We are functionally alone. There is no galactic federation coming to solve our climate crisis. There is no ancient wisdom waiting to be downloaded from a beacon to cure our diseases. We are drifting on a small raft in an infinite ocean, and no one is answering our distress flares. The universe is a cold, indifferent room, and we are the only ones breathing in it. But if you look at that isolation from a different angle, the dread begins to shift into something else. In economics, value is determined by scarcity. If diamonds were as common as gravel, they would be worthless. If life is common, if the galaxy is teeming with civilizations, then humanity is nothing more than a statistic, a rounding error in a cosmic census. But if we are alone, then we're the most valuable thing in existence. We are the gold dust scattered in a mountain of coal. Imagine the universe as a cathedral the size of a galaxy, stretching out for billions of light years in every direction. It is majestic, ancient, and terrifyingly dark. In the center of this cathedral, there is a single, small candle flickering in the gloom. That candle is us. We are the only light, the only warmth, and the only hope in a structure that is otherwise dead stone. If we allow that candle to go out, the cathedral does not just lose a flame, it loses its purpose. It goes blind. This perspective places a terrifying responsibility on our shoulders. We often act as if our survival is a game or a political debate, but the stakes are infinitely higher than we realize. If we destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons or engineer viruses or unchecked artificial intelligence, we are not just ending the story of one species. We are lobotomizing the universe. We are extinguishing the only mechanism the cosmos has ever created to understand itself. Without us, the stars are just nuclear explosions happening in silence, with no one to marvel at their beauty. We are the custodians of consciousness. We are the universe's way of feeling, thinking, and dreaming. This means we do not have the luxury of self-destruction. We do not have the right to be reckless with our future, because our future is the only one that exists. Every child born, every piece of art created, and every scientific discovery made is an act of defiance against the void. We are fighting a war against entropy, and for now, against all odds, we are winning. So, stop looking at the stars and waiting to be saved. Stop fearing the silence or hoping for a savior to descend from the clouds. The silence is not a rejection. It is a blank page. It is an invitation for us to write the first chapter of a story that could last for billions of years. We are not the victims of a lonely universe. We are its architects. We are the first ones to wake up, the first ones to open our eyes, and the first ones to speak. The terrifying truth is that we are alone, but the empowering truth is that we are free. We have the potential to spread life to dead worlds, to fill the silence with our own music, and to turn the graveyard into a garden. The great silence is not a sign that we should be quiet. It is a sign that the universe is waiting for us to make some noise. We're the only ones who can hear the scream of the void, and therefore, we are the only ones who can answer it. The night sky is dark, and it is quiet, and it is empty. But it doesn't have to stay that way.